Give you a reason to come. The world's greatest radio. We give you a reason to stay. Radio, the way it should be heard. You got the power.
The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guest and not necessarily those of TalkTainmentRadio.com, the management, the staff, or K&E World Network, LLC.
This is the Compensatory Concept with Mr. NeelyFuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio, the way it should be heard. And now, Mr. NeelyFuller.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Only confuse you. Only confuse you.
Good morning and welcome to TalkTainmentRadio.com. We go where you go. Welcome to this program. You're in touch with the Compensatory Concept. I'm the co-host, Mr. Bobby, and this is Radio the Way It Should Be Heard. Live on the line, on the phone from Washington, D.C. is Mr. NeelyFuller Jr. He is the author of the book, The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, a compensatory counter-racist code. As a matter of fact, that book is for sale. You can get that by going to producejustice.com. That is producejustice.com, and on the screen we'll have all the information that you will need to get the book. Particularly this one it is the revised expanded edition 2016, and it simply is a textbook workbook for thought, speech, and or action for victims of racism, which is white supremacy. Good morning to all, and thank you again for listening, and many people listen. And by the way, we welcome all comments, good or bad. It doesn't matter to me, as long as you're listening, that is the main thing. Mr. Fuller is on the line. Mr. Fuller, good morning, and how are you?
Good morning, and I'm still learning.
You are still learning. Good. Let me get my papers here. Okay, now, to start off the program, we usually like to have a segment where you go. We're going to have more of you and less of me. So what would you like to start off this segment about, or what did you find in the news that you want to open up the program with?
Well, one of the latest emails that I received, someone had a question about why I'm not prominent on the what they might call the talking heads radios and television and whatnot. Most of it is because, first of all, I'm not invited to most of these forums, and then the other is something that I elect to do myself, and that is to de-emphasize the cult of personality, because it's very easy, I have found over the years, over the decades, for black people in the Northwestern Hemisphere, particularly, to become sort of used to the cult of personalities. They speak in terms of persons. Well, I like this person. I don't like that person. I like the way he or she does this, or he or she says this. And so they become either turned on or off by the personalities of people. And we don't have a tendency collectively to pay much attention to what is actually being done that is of constructive value, that will take root and spread to all of the people who are most in need of those things of constructive value coming to him or her. So in other words, the message rather than the messenger. We have a tendency to become all wrapped up in the messenger. And it's just that personality cult thing. It's kind of ingrained in us. What is being said gets completely lost. What is being done is not even paid any attention to at all. It's just, people talking and talking and talking, and nothing changes and whatnot, but everybody's all wrapped up in, well, I don't like him, I don't like her, I do like him, I do like her, and it's always about personalities. And we're kind of like that way in everything even day-to-day on jobs and everything, not paying attention to what is actually being accomplished, what is actually being done. So my whole thing with the United Independent Compensatory Code System concept is that each individual becomes empowered in doing what needs to be done. It's all about doing things. It's all about getting something done that needs doing. It's not about anything else, how anybody feels about anybody. We got to get rid of that altogether, period. I mean, even if people are being exalted, I mean, that should be discouraged. They say, look, hey, pay attention to what's being done, what's getting done. Either something is getting done that needs doing or it isn't. That's the only criteria. There is no other criteria. None. Zero. And that's the thing that I'm trying to emphasize. I mean, and that's completely alien to most black people. Most black people are, well, you know, who's the leader? Where's the leader? Counter-racist codification is about you being the leader of yourself. That's what it's about. And the concept is if you empower each individual person to solve his or her own problems by using a code of thought, speech, and action, then you empower all persons. It's a simple formula, but it's hard to catch on. When you deliver it to people, they look at you in complete bewilderment. What do you mean? The individual? The individual being able to do something? I mean, one individual person? I mean, well, some of us look at the Olympics. We see individual persons doing things, accomplishing things. We see it on football fields and whatnot. I mean, those are individuals. They are not attached to anybody. Even on a football field, it's a team, but the individual who has the ball, I mean, has a code. I'm going to go this way. I'm going to go that way. I'm not going to do what that other guy did on that other team and whatnot. I'm not making the mistakes he's making. I'm not making any mistakes. I'm going down the field as an individual. I don't care what everybody else is doing. I know what I'm going to do. Now, when everybody on the planet who is in need of help takes that type of mentality, then you'll see a phenomenal change overnight, not any long, drawn out, well, let's go to another meeting type of thing. Someone once said, black people are the meetingest people in the world, but they never do nothing. That's got to stop.
All righty, that's got to stop. 1-877-932-9766 is the number that you can call, or you can Gmail me at 7mrbobby@gmail.com. Mr. Fuller, I had a communication that indicated that on a previous show that you mentioned that the food and water supply in this country could be suspected of being contaminated. Could you care to elaborate on that, or what you meant by that?
No, well, I never say in this country. When I talk about racism, I always speak worldwide because it's a worldwide system. So there's no such thing as countries in the system of racism. They don't exist. It's the white supremacists doing their thing and their victims reacting to it. That's all that's going on everywhere on the planet, 24 hours a day. So if somebody's poisoning water and is having an effect that is destructive on people who are classified as non-white, then the white supremacists are the usual suspects. That's the way that works. Why? Why are they the usual suspects? Because they're in charge of all the water. Period. They determine where the water is going to go and what the quality of water is going to be. So if you're drinking poison water and you're a person of color, the usual suspects are the white supremacists because they control the water and where it goes. And if they can't actually control the water physically, they control where the people who are going to be near the water that's poison are going to be. They determine where people of color are going to be on the planet. It's called relocation, dislocation, location, wherever they want people of color to be. If they want people of color to be down by a certain river, they'll simply say, well, we're just going to move them next year down by that river. And as soon as they get there, we're going to poison the river. And that way we will cut down on the population that we don't have to deal with so that we can tailor that population. That's one of their strategies, population tailoring. They're not trying to kill everybody who has color in his or her skin. They're just trying to keep the population tailored so that they can always handle groups of people like they want to. That's part of the racist strategy worldwide.
Would that same hold true for the food supply?
Food supply, air, not just water, food, air, anything that they want to do. They're in control. That's what white supremacy means. People ask, well, what is this white supremacy you keep talking about? I don't see no white supremacy. Yes, because we've gotten so accustomed to it that we don't see it anymore. And we're looking at it all the time. That's all we're looking at because that's all that there is there. That is of any significant power. Everybody has a little bit of power. Every individual, every baby in a cradle has a little bit of power. But when you start talking about the monumental power among the people of this planet, it's in the hands, not of all white people, but those white people who have chosen to be white supremacists are the most powerful people that this planet has ever seen. Those white people who have chosen to dominate and mistreat people who have color in their skin are the smartest and most powerful people that this planet has ever experienced. And that statement is either true or false. Mm-hmm. And if it's false, and I'm making the statement, I just made the statement over and over again, if it's a false statement, then there's a question. If they are not the most powerful, who are the most powerful?
All righty. Got an Gmail from Houston, Texas. Mr. Fuller, you said if a person kills someone in self-defense, they should kill themselves. But let's say a 12-year-old child is attacked by an adult, and they defend their self and kill that adult out of self-defense. Should a 12-year-old child kill their self?
I don't know where that rumor got started, because that's what that is. I've never said that. I have never, ever said that. Anybody who kills anybody in self-defense is not supposed to kill themselves. That doesn't make sense. You're killing somebody to defend yourself. It doesn't make sense. I have in the section of the book on the war what killing is about. But under law, in the section in law, I talk about killing in self-defense. Now, if someone is printed that somewhere and reprinted it and something like that, that's a huge misprint that NeelyFuller never said. I said that on the last program, the program before then, but somehow someone has spread that. That's what I mean by everybody standing by their work. That's why I don't like for my work, the words that I write, to be confused with something somebody else is saying.
Yes. Because
then the white supremacists get in on that, and they start distorting what is being said. They're excellent at doing that. And it could be them who has started that rumor. that I'm saying that a person in self-defense, if they kill someone in self-defense, they are supposed to kill themselves. No. No, absolutely not. Everybody is due the duty, not so-called right, to defend yourself against someone trying to kill you, or even someone really on a world scale, depending on what the laws will allow, you defending major property. I say that in the word, in the basic textbook, both of them. No. If the law allows you, wherever you happen to be, to kill someone in defense of your property, your major property, like in the old days, you automatically hung people, you know, in what they call the West Golden West, quote unquote, for stealing your horse. Why? Because when you took a person's horse, the concept was you were taking that person's livelihood. That person depended on that horse. That horse is everything for transportation and for plowing, for doing a lot of things, for pulling a wagon, for going long distances and whatnot. So horse thieves were frowned on by everybody. And in some places, the law allowed you, if you caught somebody stealing your horse, you found the nearest tree and strung them up on that tree by the neck immediately, defending what? Your horse from being stolen. That's not you. But at one time, that was allowed. That was not only allowed, that was encouraged. In fact, that was the understood law by everybody. Horse thieves are supposed to die, period. You don't steal somebody's horse. But fast forward nowadays, if you steal somebody's car, that's not true. All right? People depend on their cars, too. Yes. A lot of people depend on their cars for everything. Mm-hmm. If you don't have a car, you don't have a job in a lot of places. You are not going to have a job and be able to pay your bills, anything, unless you have access to a car. But cars are stolen all the time.
Yes,
and people think nothing of it.
Yes, sir.
I mean, but, you know, but defending your existence, your body, or someone who is close to you, I mean, your mother, your daughter, whatnot, from someone trying to kill them, coming into your house and whatnot, no, let me make it clear. If the law allows you to kill that assailant without you being, you know, taken by the legal system and being killed yourself or accused of murder or something like that, you flatline that person who is trying to do that. I mean immediately, and in no uncertain terms, and say anybody else that comes behind them is going to get the same thing if you get any help in doing so at all.
Okay. Talk Time Ed Radio is a 24/7, no-charge, worldwide broadcasting facility that have hosts delivering on various topics such as news, lifestyle, sports, health, wellness, religion, and politics. Now, here's one I'd like to share with you, and it's simply called Crossing Cultures. Host Julia Lynn Walker has great conversation regarding the diaspora. If you're interested in knowing your history, Julianne talks about that and more with great guests. Tune in to Crossing Cultures every Wednesday, broadcast exclusively on TalkTameAtRadio.com. That's radio the way it should be heard. This is Mr. Bobby, the co-host on the Compensatory Concept with Mr. NeelyFuller Jr., and the phone lines are now open at 1-877-932-9766, or you can Gmail me at 7mrbobby@gmail.com. Finishing out the questions from Sean from Houston. He says this: when certain blacks bleach their skin white and have plastic surgery to get rid of their African features, can they become a white supremacist if they choose to? Because you said the white supremacists choose to mistreat people who have color in their skin.
Well, that person is a white supremacist if the person chooses to be a white supremacist and they pass the test of the white supremacists. The white supremacists are the people who decide who is going to be white. There are millions of black people who, without doing anything at all, look like they are white. But it's the white supremacists who will look at them and say, yes, you look almost exactly like me. In fact, you might look exactly like me. But I have decided that you are not white. And so, therefore, you're not white. Why? Because I said so. And you say, yes, but when people look at my skin and look at yours, they see that I'm just as white as you are, even though, I might be classified as black and whatnot. I mean, some people might say I'm an albino, or some people might say that I'm just a light-skinned black person. And this is what people say. But the white supremacists will say, yes, but it depends on what people you're talking about. Fella, you are under my jurisdiction if I say so, and I say that you are not white. So, therefore, if I say you are not white, you are not white, and you will act accordingly. Why? Because I got the muscle and you haven't, and none of your black friends got the muscle to get in my face and tell me who's white and who's not, and make it stick. That's the difference between white supremacy and black people just babbling among each other. That's what the white supremacists will say and have said, and they have made it stick so far.
Okay. Let's see. Here's a question from Chris. He says that he enjoys your speaking to a white supremacy. And he said almost without fail he listens to many of the older episodes. And he said that he was tickled because Mr. Fuller mentioned the white supremacists building submarines. He says, now, I'm a black veteran U.S. Navy submarine sailor, and after 9 years of sub-duty, I left to rejoin civilian life in the computer industry. He says that he faces a lot of problems because a lot of people think that he should not be in there, basically because he's a minority. He said he thinks of himself as a common sense man that doesn't follow the crowd or follow trends. But I'm not understanding how so few black people just run away from technology, science, and engineering. He says, Mr. Fuller, why do you think black people run from science, technology, engineering based on logic, even as I appear to be doing well? Even I am subject to racism, and therefore I too have to be confused by all I've learned.
Well, the white supremacists are masters of confusion, and if you're going to dominate people over a long period of time, you must confuse them. Otherwise, you have to stand over them with a gun every day, all day long, watching every move that the people that you are dominating make. But if you can train people to think the way that you want them to think in every area of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war, any people who can train people that they're going to dominate to think the way that the people who are going to do the dominating want those subject people to think, then the people will just act on their own, generation after generation. They'll be on automatic. It's just like punching things into a computer. The computer will just keep doing what it's trained to do. The computer is a training device. I mean, once you train it, once you hit the buttons, the computer is not going to do anything except what the computer does. And a person has a mind that is a computer. Once you get control of that mind, you can set the course. You say, well, you people are good at singing and dancing and clapping your hands and sitting at the table, and eating and going to bed and sleeping. But when it comes to anything else, like using your brain to figure out very complicated things to do or to say and make them simple and practical. Leave it to someone who is classified as white. And all of you people of color are supposed to just sing and dance and clap your hands and turn flips and stand on your head or do anything that what we consider to be something that's required mostly of animals. Mm-hmm. And don't do anything that has to do with figuring anything out at all when it comes to figuring anything out in advance, making plans 10 years ahead or anything like that. If you got color in your skin, that's not your territory. Mm-hmm. You're not supposed to plan anything that goes beyond the next 5 or 6 hours.
Okay.
Leave that to the white supremacists.
All righty. Let's go to the phone lines. Line number 1. You are now on with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. What is your question?
Yeah, Dr. Neely Fuller, this is a two-part question. You say to combat white supremacy, you know what I'm saying, you have to combat it with justice, right? And Dr. Umar Johnson said to combat white supremacy, you have to, you know what I'm saying, you have to repatriate in your thinking, in your thinking economically, politically, back to Africa. And what he mean by that was like, you know, that, you know, you have to start, if you let another race take over Africa, take over the continent economically, then you have no voice. You will have no voice. And that how that counters with your thinking on, how does that counter with your thinking on how to combat white supremacy?
Well, I understand Dr. Omar Johnson is a black, correct?
Hello?
Hello?
Looks like he's not there.
All right. Well, according to the code, I say he said what he said. And you consider what he said. Now, the gentleman that called in just said that what Dr. Johnson said, you know, and he said it, you know, that he made his remarks. So according to the code, the only thing that I can do is just say he said what he said, and you consider everything that he said, and put it to your use. Put it to the use that you are told that you're supposed to use that for, if whatever that is.
By asking questions?
Or whatever it is. See, in other words, under VGQ.
Yes.
I say what I say, and any other person, that's why I asked, was he a black person? Any other person of color can say what he or she wishes to say about race, racism, or counter-racism. And the only comment that I have to say about any person who makes any statement or any suggestion about what black people should do, if that person is black, then the only statement that I can make is that that person said what he or she said. That's under Victims Guarantee Qualification. They are qualified to say these things, and they should say the things that they think that they're qualified to say. And they're qualified to say anything that they want to say under logic, compensatory logic, counter-racist logic. Any black person can say anything that he or she wants to say about race, racism, or counter-racism. And I, as a victim of racism, have a duty to recognize whatever it is that they said and point to it and say, that's what that person said, and everybody should consider it.
Okay, but if someone, Mr. Fuller, asks you, what do you think about what they said, they're not discrediting whatever this person said. They're asking your opinion of that.
Oh, my opinion of it, that they said what they said.
Okay.
But if someone asks me about what I think about doing a certain thing, then I will give my opinion.
Okay.
That way you don't get into what?
An
you don't
argument.
get into that conflict and confusion.
Okay.
That a lot of white supremacists always look for among non-white people.
All right, got it.
Non-white people are never supposed to argue with each other about their condition.
Okay.
Ever.
Okay.
Ever. That is a no-no. That's what Victims Guarantee Qualification is for. You can give your opinion, and everybody just says, well, I'll take your opinion into consideration. That's what I ask.
All righty. TalkTimeRadio.com. We go where you go. Check us out on WCRS-FM 98.3 Wednesdays and Sunday evenings. Blogs and podcasts are available. Download the TalkTimeRadio.com app to your cell or to your tablet. That's radio the way it should be heard. Stay right there. More of your phone calls and more of your Gmails coming up next. TalkTimeRadio.com. We go where you go. You can download the TalkTimeRadio.com app to your cell or to your tablet. That's radio the way it should be heard. This is Mr. Bobby, the co-host on the Compensatory Concept with Mr. NeelyFuller Jr., and you can call in by calling 1-877-932-9766, or you can Gmail me at 7mrbobby@gmail.com. Before we go to the callers, Mr. Fuller, can you speak to how one can get the book and any other updated information concerning the book?
You can get the book by going to producejustice.com. Go to producejustice.com, and all the information is there about how you can go about getting the basic textbook, the Compensatory Counter-Racist Code, the revised expanded edition, and the additional book, which is just an addition to the basic book, if you prefer to do so, and that's a Compensatory Counter-Racist Codified Word Guide. Basically, both volumes are really one book, but I couldn't squeeze it all into one book. It would be too hefty to carry around, and it's not handy enough. In fact, I have a codified slogan, you might say, and that is one problem, one book. And when I tell people about writing books, I said, if you're writing about anything dealing with the race problem, try to put everything that you can in that one book, in just one book, in how to solve the race problem, because that should be the purpose for anything that you're writing about race. Race is a problem. It's a huge problem. I say it's the number one problem on the planet. So that requires a lot of thinking, and when you sit down to write, try to write it within mind. I'm going to try to write the book that will solve the race problem. Nothing less than that. Enough with this exercise and making it some type of entertainment sport or something like that. This is not a sport. This is about business. And in 2016, everybody who writes about race should have that in mind. This is all about solutions. It's not about nothing else. It's not about drama. It's about solutions. It's about how to get things done and get things done in record time. Move right to it. Get it done at the snap of a finger. Everything that comes up, get it done at the snap of a finger. Everything. Snap, snap, snap. Bam, bam, bam. 1, 2, 3. Just like that. That's what we should have in mind. Now, that's what I set out to do. So far, I have failed. And I have failed until there is no more racism, and the system of racism worldwide is replaced with the system of justice. And regardless of what type of book that I write and what I say my intentions are, it's like doing absolutely nothing if that is not the result.
All righty. Let's now go to the phone lines. Line number 2, you are now on with Mr. NeelyFuller Jr. What is your question?
Thank you for taking this call, brother. I appreciate you and Mr. Fuller for allowing me to come to class. Before I make my comment, my confuser went out when Mr. Fuller was talking about the horse. What was Mr. Fuller's bottom line on the horse? I want to know before I make my comment.
Mr. Fuller?
The bottom line on what now?
On the horse thieves.
On the horse thieves?
Yes, sir.
Oh, no, I said that. I said that I was just giving that as an illustration of how laws change. And at one time, so I've been told, so I've read, that horse thieves, you would automatically hang a horse thief, a person that steals a horse, because so many people at one time depended on a horse. A horse was hard to get. I mean, you had to get a lot of money together to get a horse, to raise a horse, maybe if you're trying to get one on your own and whatnot. So they had what they call horse thieves, people that went around, I mean, who made it their business is to steal horses and rebrand the horses and sell them to other people. And so they said, well, we'll stop all of this because people depend on their horses for everything. You take a person's horse, you're taking that person's life. That's the way they looked at it. So when they caught a horse thief, that horse thief was usually dead within the next 15 minutes because they would find the nearest tree and hang that horse thief by the neck.
Yes.
They wouldn't waste a bullet on them because bullets were kind of hard to get back in those old days. But they had a rope that was handy because they had ropes for just about everything. I mean, you know, so that's what they would do.
I am familiar with that, but I don't know if you all are familiar that you still could not shoot a horse thief in the back. Shooting a man in the back have always been frowned on. I don't care what he had done. So, if all young people was killed for doing something dumb and stupid, human beings would have ceased to exist long ago. That's why young white people are not taken. They not treated like that when they do something dumb and stupid. They try to rehabilitate them. There was a white girl here. Her daddy went to sleep. Her and two of her friends tried to kill him, poison him. They sent her to some wooded area in Michigan where they rehabilitate white kids and rehabilitate them back to society. Now, I want to share this with you in the listening audience.
Okay, you got about a minute because we're up against it.
Okay, bro. There was a black judge here. She's 80-some years old. 2 years ago, she went outside the courthouse downtown to smoke a cigarette. A white boy confronted her. He said something to her about who you think you are, Rosa Parks. He spit in her face, slapped her. He went to trial about a week ago. The judge let him go scot-free after insulting a black judge, spitting in her face, slapping her. The judge let him go. Now, I'm going to close real quick. Malcolm X said, one of the most pathetic things in the world is a slave who doesn't even know he is a slave. Another pathetic thing is people who have been terrorized and assassinated, castrated for well over 400 years, and many of them today do not know they are being terrorized and assassinated. And it is critical that we call this terror and these political assassinations
all right, my
what
brother.
They are. This is terror and political assassination.
Okay.
And hey, real quick, brother.
I got to thank you for your comment because.
Okay, brother.
All right, thank you. All righty. Mr. Fuller, let's see here. We had to go here. Let's see here. Let's do this. Talktainment Radio. We go where you go, and you can download the TalktainmentRadio.com app to your cell or to your tablet. That's radio the way it should be heard. This is Mr. Bobby, the co-host on the compensatory concept with Mr. NeelyFuller Jr. And what we've been speaking about and what Mr. Fuller opened it up with is the dominant society of white racism, in particular, control. If you would like to make a comment on that subject or even go off topic, you can by calling 1-877-932-9766, or you can Gmail me at 7mrbobby@gmail.com. And I would ask, or at least I was asked this morning, to make sure that your comments are short or your questions are short so we can try to get more callers in. I don't want to cut anybody off. I really do not want to do that, but try to make them short and concise so that Mr. Fuller can understand it and then address that. Thank you. Let's see here. We got a question from Renzo. He says this: there was a time when employees wanted to work for the same company for their whole life, but many people have recognized how volatile the job market has been and switched their approach. Companies always have the choice to lay off and fire anyone at the drop of a hat. Now, it's very normal for employees to strive to move companies a lot to earn more money and or new skills. In the system of white supremacy, should a non-white person just be happy they have a job and not look for a higher paying job that will teach new skills, or should they always be looking for new opportunities to earn more revenue and or learn new skills at other companies?
Yes, you should always be in a learning. I always start off this program saying I'm still learning. You should always be in a learning mood, always trying to improve yourself. Babies come into the world trying to improve themselves. A baby tries to improve itself in that crib, tries to figure out how to roll over on its own, how to hold on to the railing, of the crib, how to get out of the crib and find out how to walk around like it sees the other creatures doing, coming and going at will. So it's the same. You should never stop growing. Never stop growing. Always try to learn something different that can be used of constructive value. And just forget about the labels. Companies and all like that. These are just labels. Always think about yourself as an individual on this planet who is a baby trying to grow and grow and grow and grow until you finally reach that level of what you call a universal man and or a universal woman, meaning you can go any place in the universe and be able to figure out what to do, what not to do, because everything is about doing, what to do and what not to do in order to be of the most constructive use to yourself and or others. That should never stop. All of these other labels that you hear, these sometimes are confusing and get in the way, of what company you're working for and what, this is over here and what that is over there. Just look at everything within two frames of reference, constructive, non-constructive. Try to learn anything if you can.
Okay.
Learn anything of constructive value. Learn how to do it. Watch other people and see how they come and go and how they go about doing things and see whether or not it is of constructive value or of non-constructive value, because there's no such thing as in between. Either something that someone is doing is constructive or it's non-constructive. Try to learn everything that you see anybody doing that is of constructive value and just continue to do so. And at the same time, that includes saving and spending. Pay attention to that. Get out of some of the habits that we have of spending on things that have no constructive value. Start making a list of everything that you can start saying, hey, I'm not spending no more money on doing this and doing that because I don't see where it's of any constructive value whatsoever. And just eliminate all these things from your entire existence, because the white supremacists now are seeing to it that black people in particular continue their old habits of spending everything that they have on whatever happens to be the latest thing coming down the street, without paying any attention to whether or not it is of any constructive value or something that could be used for a constructive purpose. If it doesn't, don't pick it up. And another thing, they're making it difficult for non-white people to be located any place. Anybody who has not paid attention One thing is housing. Just where you are, they are forcing you to move from place to place. I covered this in the textbook. I talk about racial dislocation confusion. They are dislocating people all over the world, people who have color, forcing you to move from one place to another. You just spend a little while here and a little while there, and then you got to move again. What's that all about? Because they have figured out when you keep people moving, you cause instability.
Yes.
And instability causes confusion.
Yes.
And confusion causes all kinds of problems.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I have it right here. You mentioned it, confusion. You have racial classification, racial dislocation, racial population that is tailored, racial sexual confusion, racial showcasing, and racial white sacrifice confusion. That's what you have written
the
down
6
here.
strategies that they are using, and they're using all of them just about now.
Yes, sir. Okay, let's see. From Brother Edamoye, he says this, Mr. Fuller, is it possible that those who created the system of white supremacy at an initial concept are not what we call humans? Could these creators be aliens, alien beings from another planet, agent robots with their own artificial intelligence?
I don't know. That's the answer. I don't know. I don't know what the white supremacists are up to minute by minute. They are up to a lot of things that has to do with increasing their ability to dominate and mistreat people of color. So anyone who is aware of these things that they think that the white supremacists might be doing can look into it and should look into it and see if they can answer these questions that are being asked.
Mm-hmm.
That's the procedure, because they're always up to something. Anytime you see them moving around, they are up to something that has to do with consolidating the power they already have.
Yes, sir. Okay. He also says this. Oh, by the way, 1-877-932-9766 is the number that you can call to get in contact with the show, or 7mrbobby@gmail.com. He says, what books or films would you suggest can help victims of racism further develop their critical thinking skills?
Just about all of them, really. I mean, that have any constructive lessons in them. You never can tell where that might be. Sometimes in a whole book, it might be just one line that can change your entire existence. So it's all a matter of where you find it. And I recommend that people read anything that they happen to lay their eyes on. I mean, at least glance at it, because at least you'll learn what not to read, to learn what is a waste of time. Turn on the television, look at an old movie. I look at a lot of them, and every now and then I pick up 1 or 2 lessons out of some old movie. They call them black and white movies made back in the 1930s and 1940s, and maybe in a few minutes I might say, oh, it's something I learned in that scene. Learned about what? About what not to do, or what to do in a certain circumstance, or how best to say something in a certain circumstance. Sometimes just 1 or 2 lines in an entire movie, or sometimes in almost every scene in an entire movie. I made up a list, and I'll probably put it on my website, of about 40 movies that I have. Sometimes I look at some of them over and over again, because I learned something each time. And they're just dramatizations. Many of them have no black people. Most of them have no black people in them at all. But you study movies for all kinds of lessons. You study them for the lessons. What did I learn from this scene? Is there anything that is worth learning? And the same with a book or a comic strip. Some of the first things that I learned about the world in general was comic strips, and I would pick up some lessons about what a comic strip sometimes shouldn't be and what a comic strip should be. But I always say that you can learn something from everything that's going on around you. The entire universe is a university, not just some place that you go to that's got four walls and some chairs and tables and books on a shelf and a professor. You're always in a university. You're always in school. There's no such thing as finishing school. We got to get that out of our heads. Get out of that box that we are finishing school. There's no such thing as finishing school. You're in school as long as you're breathing.
Okay. Got a question here. Let's see. It says, hello, Mr. Fuller. Should the president of the United States, Barack Obama, who appears to be a victim of racism, be held accountable for the mistreatment of non-white people in the country in which he is president?
No, I don't know what is meant by held accountable, and that is a word that's not even in my word guide, and a word that I have told people down through the years that I don't like the word. I don't like that those two words, held accountable, because I don't know what it means. Hold them by the toe? What do you mean, hold accountable? I don't get it. I hear this over and over again, and it's gotten to be a cliche, like that other cliche, black people need to get together. That's something else I don't ever want to hear ever again in my existence, ever again, because no definition is given to it, no specifics, what that means. Held accountable. I don't know what that means. I have no idea, not one. If I was going to hold somebody accountable, what does that mean when it comes to what do you actually do? Now, if I'm going to hold, H-O-L-D, somebody accountable, what does that mean? No one ever says. I hear it over and over again, year after year, meeting after meeting. People have whole meetings where at the final words, when they get ready to wrap up the meeting after 5 or 6 days in some fancy hotels, I've heard it down through the years, people have said, well, what we have come to in our studies, and, everybody flew in from different places, and we have been here for the last 3 days in this hotel, and we have been discussing the plight of black people. And so we have concluded, this panel that is assembled here of these PhD black people have concluded that what we need to do is hold our elected officials accountable. And everybody applauds and files out to the lunch tables and say, we'll come back and have a meeting next year in which we will spend 3 days talking about the plight of black people and come to the conclusion that what we need to do as black people collectively and individually is hold our elected officials accountable. And everybody applauds and files out until next year, where we repeat the same thing.
Yes, but
I've never understood that term, because that's the term you always come up with after a 4-day meeting.
Yes, but according to counter-racist codification logic, you came up with a term for justice because you said that you couldn't find there is no definition of justice in the book, so you came up with a compensatory definition of justice, which you have mentioned several times on this program. I'm saying, could there also be a compensatory code for the word held accountable?
Held accountable?
Yes.
Yes, but see, the compensatory logic is I didn't invent that term. So whoever uses the term should be able to explain exactly what that means.
You didn't invent the term justice either, but you gave a compensatory.
No, I gave a compensatory definition
Right.
for it because I saw a need for it. I don't see a need for that term held accountable.
Got it.
I don't even like that term. Not at all.
Okay, got it. TalkTameItRadio.com, the world's greatest radio the way it should be heard. The first hour has concluded. Stay tuned for the second hour. All righty, welcome to TalkTameItRadio.com. We go where you go on the world's greatest radio. You are in touch with the compensatory concept. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby, and this is Radio the Way It Should Be Heard. The compensatory concept with Mr. NeelyFuller Jr. And if you would like to join in on our conversation, you can by calling 1-877-932-9766, or you can Gmail me at 7mrbobby@gmail.com. Mr. Fuller is the author of the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, a compensatory counter-racist code. As a matter of fact, you can purchase this book that he has written by going to producejustice.com. This is the revised, expanded edition, which I will have him speak to later on in this second hour of the compensatory concept with Mr. NeelyFuller Jr. Okay, we have phone calls and we have Gmails. Not meaning no disrespect to you, Mr. Fuller, because trust me, I will get Gmails and emails about how I am disrespecting you by asking you questions about certain things. But as you say, I'm still learning also. Okay, let's go to the phone lines, and we have line number one. You are now on with Mr. NeelyFuller Jr. What is your question?
Yes, hello. Good morning. I'm Tyreek from the Bronx. How you doing, Mr. Bobby and Mr. Fuller?
Go ahead, Tyreek.
Yes, my question to Mr. Fuller is, due to the upcoming election and Donald Trump seeming to be a very likely strong candidate for the Republican nomination, seeing as how he brought a great amount of Americans to basically reveal their hidden racism, do you think that is a good thing? Because I've noticed that since he's been running and a lot more people have been backing him and supporting him with racist views, that it's opened the eyes of non-white people into realizing that racism is a prevalent problem and needs to be dealt with. So in light of that, do you think that it's good that we have someone openly, seemingly racist like Donald Trump that can open the eyes of people into seeing that racism still exists? That's my question.
Mr. Fuller?
I'm not quite understanding the question.
Okay, Tyreek, could you condense the question and state it so Mr. Fuller can understand what you're speaking to?
Yeah, sure. Do you think that it is good that people are, white people, are admitting their racism in this day and age? Because in past recent years, non-white people seem to be under the notion that racism doesn't exist. But seeing as how Donald Trump is galvanizing most of white America, and many of them saying that they're racist openly, do you think that is a good thing for black people to be aware of racism, as opposed to them thinking that it isn't an issue?
Mr. Fuller?
Yes. If I understand the question, do I think that is correct? If a white person is a racist, for that white person to admit to the world that he or she is a racist, if
yes.
That's the question. And
yes,
the
that
answer
is
yes, because what we need is the truth from everybody. The truth from everybody on this racial issue. The racists strive off of being deceitful, of being false. So anytime anybody tells the truth about anything that has to do with race, racism, or counter-racism, it's always, under every circumstance, a plus. It's always something that should be done. So if every white person on the planet who believes in practicing racism will stand up and say, yes, I believe in racism, I believe it's necessary. And I believe that even if it isn't necessary, I still believe in it because I just believe in it. And I think that I should be a racist, and I am one. That would be a plus for everybody. Now we can negotiate on what that means and what should be done and shouldn't be done regarding it. It will be clear in the air. Why? Because you're getting rid of confusion. You shouldn't have a planet where anybody's confused about anything, and particularly something that is important as squabbles that has gone on this long about what color somebody is or isn't and what that means. The air should be cleared, and everybody take their stand. And not only take the stand that they take, but say why. Every white person that believes in racism should say, I'll tell you, I am a racist, I believe in racism, and I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to tell you why I'm a racist, why I believe in racism, why I believe you have to have it or that you should have it, that it's a fine thing to have, considering the circumstances, and let them make their case. And no one should get mad at them telling the truth. All right? Listen to what is being said and say, oh, okay, then you can make your case about why you think that racism is not the best thing for the people of this planet. And then give your views on what you think would be better. Because that's what I do, and that's what I advocate that everybody do. And then we can wrap this thing up in no time and stop dragging it on with everybody being what? Hypocritical, which is what you don't want. We have a hypocritical world. Everybody is forced to be hypocritical in the system of white supremacy. Every last one of us is forced to be false in this system about just about everything. Don't be honest about nothing. All day, every day. So we have a hypocritical world. And that is, according to what I have written in the book, that's the definition of sin. Because as long as you have hypocrisy, you can't straighten out anything.
Absolutely.
Because you'll have confusion. And confusion is not a recipe for getting anything done that should be done.
No, sir. Okay. We're speaking about the dominant society of white supremacy, in particular, control. That is the topic, but you may go off topic by calling 1-877-932-9766, or you can Gmail me at 7mrbobby@gmail.com. We are going to go to line 2. Line 2, what is your question for Mr. Neely Fuller Jr.?
Good morning, Mr. Fuller. I myself am from the UK of Middle Eastern descent, based on the artificial construct of the white supremacy, and immigrated to the United States several years ago, and by the imposement of the dominant white society was forced to learn about American history and culture, or what I call a social order. There's not really a culture here. It's really a social order based on the hierarchy of white supremacy. But my question is, even after all of the facts, the historical documents, and the evidence that is right there in your face about the disparity of the people that are classified as black, it baffles me, why is it that when other immigrants come over, the evidence and the information is right there also for all to see? And it seems like the total amount of confusion, it's like no one cares. No one cares to empathize with the people who are most dominantly or most adversely affected. And I'm just trying to understand, how can a Northeast African like myself gain some type of composure when it comes to dealing with relatively any non-white person, but my own people who have been victims of white supremacy and completely disarrayed by its effects.
Okay, let Mr.
Thank
Fuller
you.
address that. Thank you. Mr. Fuller?
If I understand the question, it means you have confusion. The very word that I've been using consistently. The white supremacists thrive off of confusion. Anything that will confuse their victims, have their victims just running around bumping into each other and knocking each other down and getting mad about this and don't know what they're mad about, and getting mad about that and don't know what they're mad about that, and just running around, like chickens with no heads, then these people are, just like chickens with no heads, easy to dominate. So the first thing you want to do is just tangle a person's mind in all areas of activity, not just in some. In economics, which is the use of time and energy, hey, tangle these persons' minds. Get to their minds. Lead them the way that you want them to go. Have them value the things that you want them to value economically. And then go to the second area of activity, educationally, which all of these areas of activity are interconnected, by the way. And in the entertainment field, let them entertain themselves in the way that you want them to entertain themselves. You define what is entertainment, and then make a line between entertainment and education. Put it in a box. And don't make their entertainment educational. See, that's another thing. And then go to the fourth area of activity, labor. You determine what kind of work they will do and the value of work and what type of work is demeaning, what type of work is despicable, and what type of work is not, and put them in different categories and pay them accordingly. So that they will aspire to do this or aspire to do that or not aspire to do this or not aspire to do that, and at the same time, value people based on the type of work that they do. Can be the same type of person and all like that, but you put a value on them based on the type of work that you assign them to do and restrict them from doing anything outside of that. And then law, the legal system, politics. Politics is nothing but interaction between people, how people will interact with each other each and every day in every area of activity. Religion, guide them into any type of religious ceremonies that's not going to be a threat to the system of white supremacy. And keep monitor on that. If they start moving their religion into the area of harming the business of white supremacy, take note of that and shut that down. Don't let them use their religion to get anything done that makes sense. Just have them go around in a circle in whatever religion they have. Say that they have freedom of religion, but don't let them practice what their religion says that it requires them to do. Except those parts that help your business of being a white supremacist. Sex. Control their sexual activities and confuse it as much as you possibly can so that it's meaningless or it's destructive. It has a destructive effect. Everything that they do sexually has a destructive effect among them, not a constructive effect. And so you manipulate their sexuality in such a way that they are confused and that you take advantage of the confusion in any way that you choose to do. And then, of course, war, you see to it that they're always fighting each other more than anything, that they get in the habit of worshiping fighting each other, and keep them in that mode. Train them to fight each other. Make it easy for them to fight each other. And then stand back and watch the fight and referee it and step in every now and then when the fight looks like it's getting out of hand and spilling over into what you consider an area where they shouldn't be. The 9 areas of activity.
Yes, sir.
Control them. This is what it's all about. But the main word is confusion. Have drive them at each other's throats, because that's the whole purpose for the confusion. And keep them from looking at you, who is manipulating the whole thing.
Yes.
That's the white supremacist strategy all over the world, and it has worked marvelously.
Yes, it has. Talktainment Radio is a 24/7, no-charge, worldwide broadcasting facility that have hosts delivering on various topics such as news, lifestyle, sports, health, wellness, religion, and, of course, politics. Now, here's one that I would like to share with you, and it's called The Kinsmans. Now, if you're looking for a show that stimulates your mind and inspires your heart, listen to The Kinsman, intelligent conversation with a touch of inspiration, hosted by Malik Heru. The Kinsman is lovingly dedicated to the descendants of the survivors of African, or rather of the American chattel slavery. Feel the vibe of Malik Heru and ponder his message as he addresses the African American experience in its various nuances and dimensions, past, present, and future. Malik Heru's message is simply this: God is with us in our quest of freedom. That show broadcast on Wednesdays exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com. That is radio the way it should be heard. This is your co-host of the Compensatory Concept, Mr. Bobby, with Mr. Neely Fuller. And our subject today has been, or is, the dominant society of white supremacy, in particular, the control aspect. If you'd like to call in, you may by calling 1-877-932-9766, or you can Gmail me at 7mrbobby@gmail.com. Before we go to the phone line, Mr. Fuller, could you speak briefly about your book, the latest updates, and where we can get the book?
Well, the latest update is that it's not available overseas, and we're trying to work out something where we can get it available overseas, at least in the UK, in the United Kingdom. That's principally England and maybe Canada. We're working on that. But otherwise, it's just available in what they call, quote, unquote, the continental United States.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, you can get the book by going to producejustice.com. That's producejustice.com. And the method for ordering and a little bit more information is at that site.
Okay.
That's producejustice.com.
All righty. Let's go to the phone lines. Line number 1. You are now on with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. What is your question?
Hello, can I be heard?
You can be heard.
Hello, Mr. Fuller. My name is Wayman, and I'm calling from Dallas. And my question is, what are some ways that black males can constructively interact with the black female, since under the system of racism, white supremacy, we're not fully able to be considered a man?
Questions and answers. That's the only way you can do it. Before you ever get to the bedroom for that first act of sexual intercourse, there should be numerous questions and numerous answers to each and every question. And what I mean by numerous is going beyond what's your sign and stuff like that, and where do you work, and whether or not you have any children, or whether or not you're married. I mean, these are the usual 15 or 20 questions. 15 or 20 questions are nowhere near enough. It should be something like anywhere from 150 up to 200 questions, maybe more, depending on how many things you need to ask and answer in order to make for a functional, I'll say, a functional interaction, because you will not get it the way it ought to be. I want to say that to the entire world. Black male and female relationships will never be the way that they ought to be in the system of white supremacy. That's a flat statement. As long as you have white supremacy, there's no way to get it the way it ought to be. So it's strictly a make-do situation. Just make do as best you can. It's a compensatory thing. You're just, you're just saying, well, we'll get together because we agree to be together, but nobody's anybody's boss. And another element, and this is for the black females, non-white females. First time, last time. Now, that's something that's in the textbook.
Yes, sir.
Meaning what? Meaning, if he strikes you that first time, that's supposed to be the last time that he does it, because you are no longer supposed to be in a situation where he can. That's got to stop worldwide. Now, I know that's against a lot of people's tribal customs and all like that, but I'm saying this should be the recipe for the entire future. And the black male himself shouldn't want a female that he feels compelled that he has to raise his hand and slap her or beat her or do any kind of physical harm to her. No, that's not compatible at all and totally unacceptable. And another thing, the black male is not qualified to do that because he's being slapped around by the white supremacists every day in all kinds of ways. So he shouldn't be passing on that message. That's a terrible message to send. And with the small people there looking at it, on top of it, in many instances, that's an absolute no-no. First time, last time.
Okay.
I mean, and this should be understood before you ever make it to that bedroom for the first time. You say, look, let's get it understood. If you ever get so angry with me that you hit me for any reason, this so-called relationship is automatically over. That's what that first time, last time means. There's no such thing as coming back and saying, I lost my temper or anything like that. That's out. It's never, ever, 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 ever supposed to happen one time.
Period.
And when it does, that is an announcement that this so-called relationship is dead. D-E-A-D. I mean, we no longer have any kind of understanding because you just struck me in anger. Or in losing temper, any kind of way you can explain it, because there's no explanation for that.
Yes, sir. Okay. Brother Farad said this, Mr. Fuller. He says, how has the black male failed the black female or himself when no black person in existence is responsible for the condition of black people?
Black males fail by taking the position that they are supposed to be homemakers, builders, protection of the family, and all this. Black males failed at all of this when the white supremacists took over. So all black people on this planet in 2016 are prisoners of war. They fail to protect their so-called homes, homelands, all of this. Black males, black females, black offspring do not have a home in the system of white supremacy. Prisoners of war have no home, period, nowhere on the planet. And every person who is classified as non-white coming under the system of white supremacy has nothing except a warden and an illegitimate mother and father, who are the white supremacists collectively, illegitimate parents who dominate them in all areas of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Where do you find the dark-skinned people? What do you find them doing? All over this planet. Not talking about east or west or north or south. I'm talking about all over the planet. What do you find them doing? Asking one universal question: which way did the white people go? That's what we ask every day. when we get up and start looking for a job? Which way did the white people go? Because whichever way they went, I better start scampering and find out whatever that trail is that will lead me there so I can catch up with them. Otherwise, I have nothing.
All right.
Because hanging around these black people, I'm not going to get nothing but a bunch of misery. And everybody who is willing to tell the truth, or unwilling to tell the truth, they understand that. As we speak right now, you find black people by the boatload falling into the oceans all over the world, trying to answer one question: which way did the white people go? Because I got to get there. Otherwise, I got nothing. I don't even have a mind.
Wow. I'm going to go to the phone lines. Line number 2. What is your question for Mr. NeelyFuller Jr.?
Hi, good morning. My question is, since white supremacy is sort of like a mind control, and has basically controlled all of non-white people of the planet, what do you like? How do you think people like yourself and Francis Cress Welsing are able to see through and fight against that if it's such a powerful force?
Well, I can't speak for Dr. Welsing. I mean, rest her soul. But I will say I've stumbled into it by trying to figure out, in my confusion, what was going on. And being honest with myself, being forced to be honest with myself, because I didn't start out trying to be honest with myself. I was like most black people, or how I perceive most black people to be when it comes to race. I started telling myself lies, because the lies were comfortable. I mean, that was my comfort zone. But I ran out of lies to tell myself and found myself asking that universal question: which way did the white people go? Because I got to, even though I heard that they don't like me, and they have proven, those that I've bumped into have shown that they have hostility toward me, I better stay close to them. Otherwise, how am I going to ever get anything? Because they got everything. I don't know anything that they don't have, and anything that I think I need, that's where I got to get it. When I ask black people, including all the elderly black people around me, for anything, I see that that's where they go to get anything. I see that that's what they're saying. So, hey, I say, wake up and smell the coffee, Fuller. Stop fooling yourself. There's something going on here. And in a little while, I came to the conclusion that thing called white supremacy, that's real. That's not imagined. That's real. And Fuller, if you don't face that, you're going to be lying to yourself, and you are not going to be able to get anything done that makes sense ever, because you can't live on a lie. Nobody can. You're going to perish behind a lie. Stop lying to yourself. Now, is it a correct system? No, it's an evil system. But it's the only system we got. And so it's my job to replace it. That's the conclusion I came to, with a better system, and do the best I can in doing so. And that's what I'm trying to do.
Yes, sir. TalkTainmentradio.com. We go where you go. Check us out on WCRS-FM 98.3 Wednesday and Sunday evenings. Blogs and podcasts are available. Download the TalkTainmentradio.com app to your cell or to your tablet. That's radio the way it should be heard. TalkTainmentRadio.com. We go where you go. Download the TalkTainmentRadio.com app to your cell or to your tablet. That's radio the way it should be heard. This is Mr. Bobby, the co-host on The Compensatory Concept with Mr. NeelyFuller Jr. We've been on the subject, or Mr. Fuller opened up the program with the subject, the dominant society of white supremacy, in particular, control. And he's been explaining different aspects of that. If you'd like to join us, you may by calling 877-932-9766, or you can Gmail me at 7mrbobby@gmail.com. Mr. Fuller is the author of the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, a compensatory counter-racist code. You can get the new edition, 2016, not new edition, but revised, expanded edition. Let me correct myself. Not a new book, but a revised, expanded edition. I'll probably get some emails on that one too, but it is not a new book, but a revised, expanded edition of that, which Mr. Fuller and his people have put together. And also for sale, there is the Counter-Racist Codified Word Guide. And Mr. Fuller, before we go to the Gmails, can you explain a little bit about the word guide? I noticed in going through it that a lot of the things are in a particular order, in particular alphabetical order when you explain different words. Could you elaborate a little more on that?
Well, I have in the original basic textbook a word guide. About a third of the book is a word guide. And someone told me years ago, a doctor out of Chicago, he's passed on now, and he told me, he said, full of the word guide that you have in there is one of the most important things you have in the book, because it has to do with the use of words. And so I took that in the notation, and so I started expanding on it, and it became what was enough material for another book. I still have a lot of words that are not in there that I could have put in there, but I tried to be selective in doing so, since the English language does consist of many, 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 many words. So I tried to pick out some words that I thought need to be paid attention to, and I put that in the form of a counter-racist word guide. In other words, and in the book, I framed it within questions and answers, because I say all problems are solved through the process of questions and answers. So I ask people to ask questions about what certain words mean. Now, I discussed this morning about the word, the word phrase, hold accountable. That term is not in the counter-racist word guide. I could have put it in there, but if someone wants to, they can themselves, because under compensatory logic, you can, use words any way that you want to. I try to get that out there. You can put new definitions to old words, and you can even make up words like people do. In the field of hip-hop, I think, people made up words and terms and expressions, and you can do that. There's no universal quote-unquote law against you can't make up a word. All words are made up by somebody, and there are no specific people who are designated to make up words, even though the racists do not like people to do that. They don't like you making up words on your own, because now you're fashioning tools on your own, and it also indicates you're doing some thinking on your own when you start making up terms, or even taking old terms and giving them new definitions, like I've done in the compensatory counter-racist codified word guide. But mostly in the word guide, I mostly ask questions about words that are being used. And you might ask a number of questions, not just one question, like a definition, but you might want an explanation for the definition, which definitions are made up of more words. And then you can ask questions even about definitions. Why did you do this? Why do you say that? Because I found that the racists dominate people to a great extent through the use of words. And so you want to come up with a counter-racist language that counters what they do when they use words. And words can be powerful.
Yes.
They motivate people to do things. Words are nothing but tools. And you can use those tools to gain power or to strip someone of power.
Yes, sir.
It's done every day.
Yes, sir. Okay, let's go to the Gmails. This is from the brother from, he says, so-called French Guyana. He says, Mr. Fuller, do you think that non-white people understand that producing justice is a logical and practical process that has nothing to do with what we get, but it has to do with why and how we use what we get, including our brain as labels and titles and other distinctions and materials are not signs of producing justice, particularly in a world dominated by white supremacy?
Well, the short answer is yes. You come up with a code for doing that. A code is nothing but a way of getting things done. You look at things and you say, is this something that should be done or shouldn't be done? And if it's something that should be done, find out the best codified or procedure, which is what a code is, for doing it. And stay away from the things that shouldn't be done. That's all it is.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Another question from Did It Got Away? That's what the handle is. This person says, why is it that white men always ask a black man where he works? I can just meet a white man, and after 30 seconds, he will ask me where I work.
Well, the best person to answer that question would be the person that asked the question. You ask that person the question. But if the white person is a white supremacist, they are seeking information that's going to give strength to the system of white supremacy.
Okay.
Because they don't do anything that's not going to give them strength.
All righty. All right, Houston, Texas is really in the house today. And here is another question from Houston, Texas. Mr. Fuller, do you consider yourself a boy on the system of racism, white supremacy? If so, how can a boy produce a code in the system of racism, white supremacy? Because you said we have to grow up, and a child is not grown up. Just trying to get clarification. LeVar in Houston.
The answer is yes, I am a boy. A boy is subject to a man. And there's only one man on the planet. And that is a man who is classified, a male person who is classified as white, who is also a white supremacist. That's the man. We call him that, the man. Here come the man. Y'all better hush. Here come the man. That's what that means.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's a black person coming down the hall, you might say, that's the man. But what you really mean is, that's the man who's been sent by the man under the system of white supremacy.
Okay.
So you better shape up. I mean, you better stop the nonsense, because they are not about nonsense. Everything that they do makes sense to them in the system of racism, which is being dominant and they're mistreating non-white people. So I am classified as a boy. Boys are subject to men.
Okay.
And so I have been put in the status of a boy. However, a boy can evolve into manhood by becoming a man. You're a boy before you're a man. And what's the process? The process is overcoming the obstacles, solving the problems that are being put before you. That is the path to becoming, going from a boy to a man.
Yes, sir. TalkTainmentRadio.com. We go where you go. Download the TalkTainmentRadio.com app to your cell or to your tablet. That's radio, the way it should be heard. This is your co-host, Mr. Bobby, on the Compensatory Concept with Mr. NeelyFuller Jr., and you can join in the conversation, if you would like, by calling 1-877-932-9766. Or you can Gmail me at 7mrbobby@gmail.com. We've been talking, or Mr. Fuller has been talking about the dominant society of white supremacy, in particular, control. And we have one question from Keith. He says, Mr. Fuller, according to you, everyone is complicit in the participation in the system of racism and white supremacy. Then the act of the shooter killing the police was justified. I am not saying that it was right, but everyone is acting on the behalf of racism, white supremacy. Mr. Fuller said it is not an example of maximum emergency compensatory. I'm just reading it just the way he has it. If it is not, why? If it was, I understand the concept correctly. Clearly, Mr. Fuller has indicated that no one is innocent unless they are mentally disabled, mentally incapacitated, or too young to understand. He emphasized baby. I am confused. According to the textbook, if a victim of racism, white supremacy cannot get relief, the victim performs the act of maximum emergency compensatory out of desperation when their issues cannot be addressed. Mr. Fuller?
Well, the way I always answer questions about maximum emergency compensatory action is to tell people to read what it says in the textbook. That's something that I invented. Maximum emergency compensatory action. That's a term that I invented. And I describe the term in fine detail.
Yes.
And the reader is supposed to, by compensatory logic, take it for what they see in writing and make their own interpretation based on what they are looking at. What it says is what it is and what it isn't. And I leave it just like that. I don't compare it to anything. I do not discuss it outside of that because it gets too complicated and it causes too much what?
Confusion.
So
yes.
Therefore, a person can read it and take with them, him or her, whatever he or she gets out of having read it.
Yes.
But it's in fine detail. It covers a lot of pages, and all of the questions and answers are supposed to be right there.
Yes.
And anything that you don't see in the form of an answer that's not there, then back away from it until you do understand what is being presented.
Yes.
Because I am duty bound not to go any further than that, and for very practical and logical reasons. It causes more problems than it solves.
Yes, sir.
For me to go outside of those boundaries.
Yes, sir.
But like everything else in the code book, you take it or leave it according to your best of understanding. And anything that you don't understand, the code book itself says you definitely don't delve into it any further, and certainly don't act on it.
Yes.
On something that you don't understand.
As a matter of fact, it does. For those who have the compensatory counter-racist codified word guide, it is on page 226, as Mr. Fuller has been talking about. There's quite a bit of information on maximum emergency compensatory action. Absolutely, Mr. Fuller, you're correct. Woo! Have mercy. Wow, that was quite a question here. Okay, 1-877-932-9766 is the number that you can get in contact with the show in the remaining moments, or 7mrbobby@gmail.com. if you're writing in or emailing me, Gmailing me, I will not get a chance to read those questions maybe until next week because they do go into a question rotation. Mr. Fuller, this comes from, I can't pronounce that name, so I'm not even going to try, but it says, Mr. Bobby, ask Mr. Fuller his thoughts on paying Mormons and Christians for my father's bloodline history that goes back to the 1850 slavery, then sharecropping. Okay, that's what they have down there. Mr. Fuller?
The question is what?
It says, ask Dr. Fuller his thoughts on paying Mormons and Christians for my father's bloodline history that goes back to 1850 slavery, then sharecropping.
Oh, being paid like reparations, compensation?
Whatever that person, right?
Yes,
I'm not sure.
You can always ask for compensation from the people who are supposed to pay it. Yes. The answer is yes. That's compensatory logic. If you work for something, or something, that you inherited, that you're entitled to, you ask for it. Ask for what should be given to whomever it is that you think you're supposed to ask.
Yes.
That's it.
Okay. Another question. Now, this is kind of long, so I'm going to have to try to shorten it. But this question or comment comes from what happened to the great Dr. Sebi this past weekend. Over the course of the past 3 weeks is proof of how white supremacy has a global reach. Dr. Sebi was a renowned holistic healer living in Honduras who helped people as famous as Michael Jackson and some other regular folks as well. But because he was using his knowledge for a constructive purposes, the system of white supremacy had been seeking multiple ways to try and discredit him. And when that failed, they reached down into Central America, namely Mexico, had him jailed while in possession of $37,000 of his own money, allowed him to contract pneumonia, and he died while still in vibrant and a healthy 83-year-old man. So I say all that to say that what Mr. Fuller has been teaching us here for months and years is now exactly true, that there is nowhere you can hide from the hand of the white supremacist, because as he likes to say, it's a global prison plantation, and this here proves it. Thanks for your time, and thanks for always getting to my question. Mr. Fuller, were you aware of Dr. Sebi and his great works? In fact, he had the cure for AIDS and gave proof of that long before the medical community had anything to do with that, but they seemed to discredit him. He was taken to the Supreme Court and won, but nothing was said about that. Do you have any information or know anything about Dr. Sebi's work? Hello? Mr. Fuller? Are we still on? Okay. Okay, yeah, Dr. Sebi was a great man. Mr. Fuller, if you're on, you can jump in at any time here, knowing about his great work that he did. But he was, I think Dr. Sebi passed this week. Mr. Fuller, are you there now? Okay. Yeah, he passed this week, and he was great. As a matter of fact, Miss Libby Rand. Okay, Mr. Fuller, did you hear the question?
Yes, but it's kind of elongated.
Well, basically, he was asking about Dr. Sebi, who is a holistic healer. He found a cure for AIDS and many other diseases that a person could have. He was found, or rather pronounced dead in Mexico, supposedly dying of pneumonia. He was stopped for having $37,000 with him of his own money. Are you aware of his work, and were you aware of that situation?
No, I'm not.
Okay, that's as simple as that. Yeah, he was a great man. Let's see here. Let's go to this. Let's see. Okay, wait a minute. I have to read another question here because that's not going to get it for this one. Okay. From Chris. He says this, Mr. Fuller. At one point, someone mentioned you as a visionary and closely working with Dr. Welsing. Another member of our conversation group said that he appreciated you and you being Mr. Fuller, and but cannot understand how you could call white people the smartest people on the earth. In fact, he says that you went on to say, how could Mr. Fuller say such a thing and expect us to rise? Now, I'm sure Mr. Fuller has defended this statement in the past, but can you ask him, don't such comments hold us as being black folks back? How are we to rise if even the great elders feel that way?
The procedure is, according to the code, truth plus justice plus correctness equals peace. Now, what's that first word in that equation? Truth. So, what the gentleman is referring to is a search for the truth. So that's the first thing we start with. So, we ask the logical question. Always follow the logic. Are the white supremacists smarter than their victims? That's the question. Are the white supremacists smarter than the victims of white supremacy? And if you follow logic rather than emotional responses, I came to the conclusion, yes, because a person who can dominate you and you don't know what to do about it and you don't want to be dominated, but you don't know how to stop the domination, that person, logically speaking, mathematically speaking, is smarter than you because you haven't figured out how to stop something from happening to you that you do not want to happen, that's being inflicted on you by someone who's smart enough to cause the affliction. That's the logic. Now, it may be flawed logic. I don't think so. But anybody who can tell me what to do, where to go, where to sleep, where I can't sleep, what I can eat, what I better not eat, what kind of roof I'm supposed to have over my head, what I'm supposed to think, what religion I'm supposed to practice, what my sexual activities are supposed to be or not supposed to be, who can feed me, clothe me, house me, or deny me food, clothing, and shelter, I would tend to believe that that person is smarter than me. Even though the person might be abusing me, I would tend to believe that I can't figure out what to do about this abuse that I'm receiving from this person that I depend on for everything. Not some things, but for everything.
Yes, sir.
And I would say that that person is pretty smart.
Okay.
Now, the person might be evil, like, illegitimate parents, or evil, if they choose to be.
Yes, sir.
But that's what I'm stuck with until I get unstuck.
Okay.
Which means I got to get smart.
All righty. When you hear the music, you know what that means. Brother Obazy, we'll get to your question next week. TalkToHim@radio.com, the world's greatest radio.